So we have two things here. Fruits is a list of strings, and people is a list of whats. The square brackets make it a list, and then within this list, each item is a tuple. So let's first loop through fruits. So the all-purpose workhorse looper function in Python is called for. I'm sure you've run into for loops in other languages. Sometimes they're called for each loops. And it's basically for variable in iterable do something. The iterable can be anything that is designed to be a sequence. It can be a real sequence, which is all we've seen so far, such as a list or a tuple or a string, or as we'll see a little bit later in the chapter, it could be a generator, so it could be a virtual sequence. But the thing you loop through has to be some sort of sequence, which makes sense. And the variable takes on the value of each element in the sequence. So here now, we're taking our list of people, each of which is a tuple, and we are iterating through it for geek in people, and geek, the geek variable takes on the tuple, so geek sub 0 is the first name. Now this is kind of a fun thing. It's a little bit, for some people it's a little bit tricky, so remember that people looks like that. Now we're looping through people, and each element of people is a tuple, so geek sub 0 is the first name. Maybe I want to do something like this. So now we're getting geek 1 and geek 0 out of our list. The variable of the for loop is always the thing you're iterating through, whatever that one element of the thing you're iterating through. So F is always one element of fruits. Geek, in this case, is always one element of people. If there's just one variable in the for loop, it always means set each element of whatever you're iterating through to that variable, or set that variable to one element in order. I have a good question. How does Python know what geek and F are without defining them? We didn't say F equals this or geek equals that. Well, that's just how the for loop works. When we say for v in thing, Python sets v to be each item in thing. So it takes on the type of each element of thing. If we have a list of numbers, v would be set to numbers. If thing has 3 numbers and then 3 strings and then 2 dates, v will be set to that. So the loop variable is set to the type of whatever each individual item is as you loop through or iterate through the sequence. So in this case, geek is set over and over to a tuple because that's what people contains. In this case, F is set. Really, it works like this. So this is really how a for loop works. It gets an iterator out of whatever you're going to loop through, this thing called an iterator, and then as long as it as long as there's a next value, it grabs the next value and does something with it. And when there's no next value, it actually generates a stop iteration, which is trapped internally by the for loop. So what really happens is, behind the scenes, it's saying, give me the next element of people and set geek to it. Now give me the next element of people and set geek to it again. Now give me the next element, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, people says, hey, man, I've got no more elements. And the for loop says, cool, dude, and quits looping. Because geek is a tuple, it depends on what you have in the list. In this case, because every element of our list happens to be a tuple, then to get a value out of it, we have to index it, because geek is set to each element. However, let me show you another way to do it. This only works if every element of people has exactly 2 elements. In other words, if each element of people is itself a 2-element thing. If we added a middle name up here, it would fail. If it was Bill, you know, if we did that, it would fail, because when it tried to convert that to the 2 variables, it would say, wait a minute, I've got too many things. And in fact, you get an error, too many values to unpack. Converting the list of 2 items into these 2 names, converting the tuple into variables, is called unpacking. And this works because each tuple has 2 elements. You can also iterate through a string. So line 33 iterates through the individual characters in string S. And remember, on line 34, putting the comma prints a space instead of a new line, just to save a little screen real estate. So I know that this is a little tricky, this iterating through a nested sequence, but it's really useful.